It starts with good intentions. You step up and you join the HOA or condo board and you figure, how hard can it be? But pretty soon you're buried in emails and group texts, sorting through outdated PDFs and trying to remember which spreadsheet has the real budget numbers. Half the board is making stuff up, the other half is burnt out, and nobody really knows where anything is. And it's not that you're doing a bad job, that you guys are doing a bad job. It's that you were never really given the right tools to begin with. So we have listened to hundreds of boards, and some, have chosen Solume and others who haven't. And the story is always the same. Volunteer boards that are just doing the best that they can, but burning out and making mistakes because there's no real system in place to make their lives easier. Meanwhile, big software companies show up with polished marketing and impressive feature lists, and it's easy to believe that they're the best option on the market. And to be fair, some of them actually do offer a lot of good tools. But here's the truth. Most of those platforms weren't built for HOAs. They were built for management companies or apartment buildings, large-scale real estate portfolios, and then retrofitted for communities like yours. Solume is different in that way. We actually started with the HOA and condo board in mind and built everything around what real communities actually need. No fluff, no real just enterprise level nonsense, just everything in one place designed to be really so simple that your least tech savvy board member can take it and run with it. What problem does HOA software actually solve? There are a few important reasons why HOAs need specific software. Asset management and reserve study management is among the most important. Missed deadlines and forgotten inspections are major reasons why communities fall apart and have special assessments. And this leads to volunteer burnout from trying to keep track of everything on spreadsheets and group text and email threads like we talked about. Lack of transparency with homeowner leads to mistrust. By not having a centralized system where everything is tracked and visible when needed, people lose trust in the board and they just make stuff up. They fill in the blanks. So how do you know when your community has outgrown spreadsheets and emails? Spreadsheets can work if you have someone on your board who is a master at spreadsheets and probably plans on staying on the board for a decade or more. Otherwise, if a board member finds himself or herself copying and pasting, info from one place to another into an email, it's probably time to centralize everything. Additionally, there are actually legal reasons why it's essential to have a centralized place for all the information. Communication, budgets, reserve planning, vendor procurement processes, architectural requests. These really can't be easily tracked or publicly available if they're just on spreadsheets. Solume is really the only software on the market that allows you to track your reserve fund, your financial plans, and everything else that you need all in one place. How do you decide what HOA software to choose? When deciding what software to use, you need to really balance ease of use and the features your community actually needs. Some of the biggest names out there are kind of clunky legacy software that are nearly impossible to pick up easily. Other software might be easy to navigate, but it doesn't really have all the features even the smallest communities need. Look for tools that track everything your community needs and that the laws require. Remember, in most cases, HOAs and condo associations are volunteer boards, not professionally managed communities. Solume strikes that balance so that boards who aren't tech savvy can navigate it with ease, but it also has all the features that most communities actually do need. How many HOAs in the United States still don't use software? While over 70% of professionally managed HOAs use a software of some sort, considerably fewer that are self-managed communities do. With over 75 million people living in HOAs or condo associations, this isn't just some small problem. Solume bridges the gap by giving volunteer boards the structure of a professional manager without the cost or the complexity. We give volunteer boards the systems they need without having to hire a management company. Why does HOA software matter more in self-managed communities versus professionally managed? The vast majority of HOAs and condo association boards are made up of unpaid volunteers who balance their own lives. They have work, they have children, they have friends. So software is essential because the boards need more support, not just a bunch of tasks that get left behind or fall through the cracks. Even smaller boards risk legal exposure or resident pushback due to disorganization. With high turnover rate of HOA boards, typically 1 to 3 years in many cases, Boards must have a centralized place where information is accessible to new board members as they roll on, and previous board members that, when they leave, they don't take all this vital information that's stored in their inbox or on their computer. So think about it. When a new board member is rolling on, they're coming in a lot of times blindly, and a lot of times the previous board members are leaving with a lot of information, and there isn't a whole lot of overlap there. So having a centralized place where all the information can exist, if a new board member comes in, they can kind of see what the decisions were made previously. And when an old board member rolls off or a previous board member rolls off, they're not taking all of that information with them. So a centralized place that exists within the community, same thing with a management company. If you roll one on or roll one off, they don't just leave with all the data. How much time can software actually save your board? We recently spoke to a board member of a small community, really only about 14 homes, and she spent on average, she said, 3 to 5 hours a week on what she called just HOA stuff. Between budget reconciliation, vendor procurement, tracking down due payments, and reminding other board members that they need to follow up on the architectural request, she desperately needed a system. Solume showed her how we set up an automation to handle many of her manual tasks, actually reducing her time to as low as 3 to 5 hours a month. How can software help communication improve with homeowners? Many HOA board members mention dues tracking, sending out reminders, and answering questions that homeowners should look up themselves among the most time-consuming and frustrating parts of being on the board. Solume automates most of the busy work and answers the most obscure questions about your community and allows board members to actually enjoy their role. Communication about these rules and regulations and status updates on architectural requests and financial management are all at your fingertips, so you're not having to chase them down manually. Will software help reduce violations and conflict among a community? HOA violations happen for two primary reasons. Number one, people don't know what the rules are, or two, they think the rules are stupid and they just don't apply to them. And no software can kind of help you with the latter. However, software can help with reminders before violations occur and provide public platforms where homeowners can access the rules. Boards should track violations and keep a record of these violations for a minimum of 3 years. With Solume, boards avoid selective enforcement by keeping everything kind of trackable. What kind of feedback do homeowners give when communication improves? Honestly, you start to feel the shift pretty quickly. People stop assuming the worst. You'll hear things like, oh, I finally know what's going on around here. Or, thanks for the heads up. I normally find out about this information later. Even if someone doesn't really agree with the decision, they're less likely to get angry if they were made aware of it earlier in the process. It's not magic, but it does lower the temperature in a community. That's less finger pointing, less guessing, and when people start, feeling blindsided, the board starts feeling like it's constantly, playing defense mode. What features actually matter in HOA software? Software companies will put a lot of fluff into their functions just so they can sell you additional features. The best way to approach this is to take a step back and really think about what do you actually need. What we need may or may not align with what they have, or it might actually just be dictated by what the law states. Here are a few features to consider when making your decision on what HOA software to use. You need to think about things like dues collection in-app, reserve fund tracking, violation notification and tracking, architectural requests, budget transaction tracking, and communication to owners and residents. The bottom line is this: does it make your life any easier and does it keep you compliant? What's the difference between software for managers versus self-managed boards? Many software companies that are marketed HOAs weren't actually built for HOAs. They were built for another purpose, but then adopted by HOAs as a make-do solution. Large legacy software were built on the premise that you have a paid staff who has the time to master their clunky features. There's a disconnect between a volunteer board's reality and what solutions are currently available. Many of these platforms are considered legacy not because they're obsolete, but because they were built for a different era or a different user, management companies. Their interactions, their workflows, their assumptions don't reflect how modern self-managed communities actually operate. They often feel like using an enterprise system just to manage a neighborhood barbecue. Solume wasn't built for management companies and then repackaged for HOAs. We started with HOA management communities from day one, specifically with board members who are volunteers, not software experts. Every feature was designed around what boards actually need: tracking dues, violations, architectural requests, reserve planning, without all the bloated extras that just get in the way. And most importantly, it's dead simple to use. Even the least tech-savvy person on your board can log in and actually use it. Is free HOA software worth it? Well, free HOA software is sometimes worth what you pay for it. And if all you need is one or two features to get a simple task done, there are free options out there that are probably okay. The complaint we've heard, though, are that they didn't realize they were signing up to be spammed or to spam their neighborhood with ads. You have to remember that a free tool is only free because it's profiting from your data in some other way, such as ads targeting your neighborhood or confidential information could be exposed. Also, free tools have a lot of limitations, not to mention really no tech support. So these are just a lot of the things that you need to consider when making the decision whether or not to use a software to support your community, and if you choose to use one, which one to use. So if you have any questions about this, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to provide you with a demo, even give your community a free trial for 30 days. So if you have any questions, reach out to us at solume.com.